Hi, you're listening to Playing Out from the Bar. Please be aware this podcast contains strong language.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of our debut episode on Playing Out from the Bar. Let's pick up where we left off. We're going to move on now to some of our more unpopular football opinions. And remember, as ever on Playing Out from the Bar, the nicher the better, the less mainstream the better, so to speak. So, Tracy, do you want to kick us off with some unpopular football opinions?
Well, my big one that sounded a bit wrong. My unpopular football opinion, I've had this for a while, and I've touched on him already tonight, and that's Jonathan Woodgate, in my opinion, had the potential to be the best centre-back of that golden generation. And if he actually had working knees, he would have achieved that potential. Because I know it sounds quite bold when, you know, you've got Terry, Ferdinand, Campbell, King, Carragher within that bracket as well. But for me, I remember being probably about 6 or 7, just getting into football, and I remember watching a prime Thierry Henry get absolutely marked out the game by Jonathan Woodgate at Leeds at the time, and thinking, oh my God, wow, like, who is this guy? And, you know, what a player he was. So I just think he had everything, like good on the ball, strong, quick, you know, put his head anywhere. He was just brilliant.
I feel like this is superb, and the only issue of this is that probably amongst us as a group, for the majority it would be a popular football opinion, because I completely agree with you. I think that we only had him for a season and a half at Newcastle, not even 2 seasons, but he was easily the best centre-half I've ever seen at Newcastle by a long, long way. And you're right, if his legs weren't made of like clay china, he probably would have... I mean, he still got the move to Real Madrid, so you can't say he didn't like fulfil his potential completely, but in terms of England appearances, I agree with you. I think he should have had a lot more caps than he got.
What about...
Just on Real Madrid, I think...
Sorry, Trice, my question for you is that, what I was going to say is, if Ledley King's knees also worked to 100%, where would that put him?
They've both got new limbs.
Yeah.
Woodgate and King with new limbs. I don't want to be disrespectful to Terry and Ferdinand, who have probably got just short of 200 England appearances and won everything within the game, but I think that may have become the pairing. I don't know. It's all hypothetical, isn't it? You know, back three
but he's
would have
got the
been
potential
amazing.
there, hasn't it?
You do look at the pre-Mourinho John Terry, and I know I'm not like criticising him too much because, like you say, he's achieved pretty much everything there is to do in the game. And he was England captain after all. But I just don't feel, in terms of like being an all-rounded centre half, like being able to ball play as well as do the sort of stopper side of it. I just think Woodgate and King were far superior to him. But that's...
And like now, Jack, you know, John Stones has been sort of, a couple of years ago, was talked about, is he good enough to play centre midfield for England? And it's like, no, probably not. Just because he passes the ball nicely for Man City.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to be able to do both, yeah.
Ledley King was generally picked as he went to Euro 2004 as someone who could play centre midfield and centre half, and both those positions at that time were possibly the strongest of that golden generation, really, in terms of the depth. And I think that's all right. That's credit to Ledley King, really. But I remember, like, in the qualifiers for Euro 2004, it might have even been a friendly, but Woodgate and Terry actually were on the pitch together. They either came on as sub or they started and came off together. And the commentary at the time was just like, we're looking at the future pairing here for England, Woodgate and Terry.
Yeah.
How many caps are these going to make between them? And it's just such a shame that, Jonathan Woodgate, he signed for Real Madrid, having, as I said earlier, he'd been out 4 months injured that season previously. So in the time when he was at Leeds and Newcastle, was it his following club? Yeah.
Yeah.
Real Madrid, who don't really mess around, have seen enough to go, like, we see him as part of our back four with Sergio Ramos and Fabio Cannavaro. So it's like...
Yeah. I just remember his final game for Newcastle, or final season, it was probably his second to last game or something. We played Marseille in the UEFA Cup semi-final, and they had Didier Drogba up front, and he marked Drogba out the game, like single-handedly took Drogba out the game. He then got injured, like, which was then he was out for the months that you've said before the transfer to Real Madrid. And he didn't play the second leg, and in the second leg, Drogba scored 2 goals, and Marseille won. Like that was the difference he made.
Yeah, I can't rate him highly enough, to be honest. So that's my main one. What about you guys?
I think for me, when I was thinking about this, and it got touched on earlier very briefly, and I'm not sure how. If this will fall as an unpopular category, because probably there's a lot of people out there maybe share this opinion, but it's a strong opinion anyway for a lot of people, and I'm sure it causes a lot of debate. But transfer deadline day, it's just developed into a bit of a farce recently, and especially from the emphasis that Sky Sports have put onto it in recent years. I just maybe 5 to 10 years ago, my viewpoint on it was a very exciting day, and like the media around it and the PR around it was brilliant. But I think the way I look at it now is it's just putting a lot of, I don't know, unnecessary kind of pressure and like unrealistic valuation, and
you're not addressing the elephant in the room that transfer deadline day has become a day where Jim White thinks the day's for him. So it's like, fuck off,
I
Jim.
think that's what I was going to get onto, but I just proper got.
No one really cares.
I just think that it's like what I did. I think this came up. I sent this to you on a tweet the other day. Someone else had said it, but it's like people are just becoming more excited about what their club. The fans are becoming more excited about what their club spends, as opposed to like winning actual games. Like, because like what we were talking about earlier, the excitement of the new signing. If a new signing's not kicked a ball yet, you can't get negative about it. You can only think, oh, this is great, we've signed someone. Like, it doesn't matter how good he turns out to be at that point, you're just excited. And I just think, it's kind of become more of a parody. It's just become self-parody, really, transfer deadline day. Like, when we were younger, there was probably a point where you'd get excited by the ridiculous rumours, like Ronaldinho to Blackburn. I remember one year, and been spotted at Blackburn train station, that sort of thing. And that had its place, but I just think, I just don't know. I think nowadays, they've kind of messed around with it. You know, our deadline got moved, didn't it, to before the start of the season for the Premier League, and then Football League was different. And I don't know. It's just not what it used to be, I think.
I think the thing that gets me with transfer deadline day as well is, like, you know, the one that sticks in my mind was when David De Gea was in an apartment in Madrid about to be unveiled as a Real Madrid player. For, you know, he's going for 50 million. So how on earth, like, why do the top clubs rely on a fax machine that much to get the deal through? Like, if you're spending 50 million on David De Gea, you've got the technology to get a 3D printer and just take a picture of him having his medical and it comes through.
Yeah.
You know, that makes me laugh. Was Van Gaal at the other end just, you know, shredding documents until it I don't know.
Shredding straight from the fax machine to the shredder. He's just holding it over the top.
And what's the club's stance on kind of deadline day nowadays? Because it does seem that as every year goes on, that just more and more gets left to this like final 24, 48 hour period. It's just almost like the 2 months that build up to it just becomes so irrelevant compared to that final 48 hours. And you just think, what's held back anything from being able to be done within this period of time? Why have the club not been able to like secure the deals that they wanted to do earlier on in the window? I don't know what the percentages are, but you must be looking at quite a high percentage of deals that get done on that final day. And it's like, is the influence from that come from the television and come from the emphasis that Sky put on it, or it just seems quite strange to me.
I think it's a cycle of panic, isn't it? Normally, the top clubs and the ones who recruit well, they do their business early, but you get clubs who are like in between. You know, they'll have their list of targets, won't they? And once Liverpool, Man United have had their sort of cherry pickings, if you like, your likes of Southampton will be like, well, because their scouts will also be monitoring, like, you know, players like that who have been persuaded to go to a Liverpool or Spurs or whatever. Those lesser clubs will have their scouts watching that, I imagine. So it becomes a bit of a frenzy, like, right, well, he's not available. Let's try get him. Right, he's not available. Oh, but then so-and-so's become available because Everton have now signed him. It becomes a bit of a circus, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right.
I feel as well that like 2009's transfer window deadline day was so good because you had Man City having that last-minute takeover, buying Robinho from under Chelsea's nose, and like they were getting linked with like Berbatov, and even though he was going to Man United, which also happened that day. And I just think that deadline day raised expectations for people thinking, how good is this? Because normally, it's not a case of deals coming out of nowhere to happen on that day. It's normally just a case of deals that have been talked about for weeks before, just getting them over the line before the clock runs down, basically, which is not as exciting.
I guess really, like, it does come back to really I think you described it, try to when I mentioned it at the beginning. Like, the deadline day itself does have a lot of fond memories, a lot of excitement, but I think it's really where Sky and Jim White place themselves in that now, that they are the centre of deadline day and that they are the everything revolves around them. I think just how they present it and how the media portray it now is what I don't like about it. I think in the mid 2000s and late 2000s, when that excitement first started to come in, it was a lot more bearable. But yeah, now I do struggle to watch it or sit and listen to it, and it does just seem like it does revolve around a certain like group of presenters.
I think you've both nailed two unpopular football opinions there, although I probably agree with them strongly both myself. Okay, I'll quickly run through this. Now, if any listeners are not familiar with Bolton Wanderers 2004 to 2005 team, then I understand. But check them out. You know, Premier League years, they come up a lot. And one player I think is completely overlooked from that team, and that's Bruno Ngotti, who basically I've never before in my life, that as long as I've been watching football, can remember a player being so robbed of one accolade in particular, and Ngotti was robbed of a place in the PFA Team of the Year 2004-05. Gary Neville was the right back that season in that team, which is fair enough. You know, great, one of the best right backs the Premier League's ever seen. But that Bolton team that broke into the top six, you know, it was Sam Allardyce's team almost at their peak. You had, you know, Kevin Nolan getting on the end of long passes. You had Kevin Davis wrecking havoc up front. But I think their player of the season that year was Ngotti, and he was just a menace up and down the right wing constantly. And it, like I say, if you even just by looking at the highlights of that season, you can see what an influential player he is for that team. Long throws, energy, you know, creating goals. He's just, you know, just a very underrated player in my opinion. So.
That's an interesting one, that, Jack. I was not expecting him at all, to be honest.
It was niche.
I'll be one of them people who overlooks him. But like, where did he go on from there then? Like, what
this is
what he going to do?
This is the interesting thing, because he'd had quite a sort of, you know, a pretty good career up until, well, I would consider it, you know, he was probably at his peak at Bolton. But he'd played for PSG, AC Milan, Marseille. And then his clubs after Bolton, it's a bit of a downward trajectory, because he's at Birmingham City for a season, fine. Right. Then he plays for Leicester for 2 years when they're sort of in their weird League One era. Then he's at Hereford United on loan, from Leicester for 8 games and retires. He then comes out of retirement to join a French 6th division team in 2011. But that was it. That was it. And I just wonder sometimes, in the same way with, I don't know why right backs are such a theme for me on tonight's show, but it's just like I wonder, does Bruno Ngotti is he really upset that he was overlooked in England because he was a standout player for that Bolton team?
What? So Gary Neville was in ahead of Bruno Ngotti in your eyes? You're saying?
Yeah. That my unpopular opinion is to state it as one. Gary Neville robbed Bruno
Ngotti.
Gary Neville for one season robbed Bruno Ngotti of his rightful place in the PFA Team of the Year. And to be honest, lads, since then the PFA Team of the Year means nothing to me until they rectify that mistake. And also, it's not as if they're only choosing players from the top 4, because Andrew Johnson from Crystal Palace has made the team that year. So anyway,
scored about 15 penalties. I remember that year.
Yeah, that was it. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect that's probably less popular. If we could,
a good one though.
If we could get a social media campaign started based around Bruno Ngotti's inclusion in that team, I would be grateful.
I mean, it was sort of a bit left field, that, Jack. I didn't expect it, so I don't really have enough research to challenge on that.
No.
The only thing that came to my mind was, is that the first year of Mourinho's Chelsea?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Sorry, I should have.
Defensively, superb that year. So I could imagine Terry was.
You
So,
could make. You know what, Travis? If Paulo Ferreira was in that team, I would still not be happy, but I'd be more accepting of that decision. But I know, it's a left field choice, but I'm just glad that I just needed to get it off my chest. So I felt this was like a safe environment to do it, really.
Yeah, good one. I like that.
Okay, right. We'll move on. We'll move on to our last sort of quick fire topic of the night. We're going to look at sort of the biggest bullshitters in football, the biggest liars. There's, I'm sure we all know there's certainly enough to go around. This category was sort of inspired, to me anyway, by one man, Pele, and particularly his record of over 1,200 goals. Many of which were not in official games, and some of the stories that like came out about Pele's career years later, like I'm talking like 30 years after, I just find them scarcely believable. I mean, right, I'll give you an example of a story around Pele's career, and you can tell me after if you think it's bullshit or whether you're siding with Pele. So Pele claims that he once got, and I quote, an unfair red card in a game in Colombia after arguing with the referee. Just arguing. No, there wasn't a tackle. There was no decision to be made. It was just him arguing with the referee, and he was sent off. I think this was in the days before they even had red and yellow cards, but he was sent off. As he was walking from the field, the crowd became so enraged and started to boo and sort of were in the process of rioting that he was told, he came to the side of the pitch and was met by team directors telling him to go back on because they had kicked out the referee and had got an assistant to take his place and had ordered Pele to come back on the pitch. Now, to counteract that, I should say Pele himself told that story. Like, that's not fact. It's not like someone else has vouched for that. Pele's just come up with that off his own back. So I'm going to throw it out there. What do you two reckon to that?
Just Pele's a bullshitter.
Yeah, it seems too bullshitty to be considered as real. But I don't know. It's different times. What are the people there to see it?
Yeah.
What are the people there to see? Are they there to see the referee dish out cards, or are they there to see?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Travis. I think the insinuation is that the Colombian crowd were just there to see Pele, and that once he was off, the game didn't interest them at all.
I mean, what happened to the ref in Pele's eyes? Is he now?
He just
cartel sold him off or something. Or...
he just wasn't mentioned again. But there is a great Reddit thread on this topic, and like specifically someone's like chipped in, curious question, how does kicking out the referee thing work? Does someone FIFA actually come in during the middle of the game and change referee or what? And it's like, there's just so many unanswered questions about this that I don't know, I just can't I can't side with Pele.
I kind of think Pele is the potential to be the Jay from the In-Betweeners of the football world.
Well, the guy's won 3 World Cups, though. He may lie about some things, but
yeah, no, that is true. But interesting about this like goal scoring record. Then I kind of heard about this. He's meant to have scored, what is it like? Is it 1,100 goals?
It's over 1,200. Yeah, I assume it stops before.
And then there's, I suppose, like in the hundreds that are unofficial, so that it's just been declared has been scored in like in where? Like where are these goals been scored? Like friendlies, like.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think when they say unofficial games, that's what they're referring to, like friendlies. Right. But then there's debate in Brazilian football about what constitutes a friendly and what constitutes a state championship match. So it's like you just get bogged down in semantics, really.
Is it just Pele who's keeping a tally of his goals?
Exactly.
And then just providing like a monthly update? Just like, 72 for this month. No, I feel like I'm doing a bit of it. I'm being a bit harsh on. No, at an all-time great. It is funny though. It's always funny to read about it. But,
Tommy, I don't think you are doing him a disservice.
Everyone says, "Oh, Pele, he's got over 1,000 goals," but you've probably done a bit more research than me into this, Jack. But isn't it like in Brazil, like the class? There'll be a team called Juventus, hypothetically, who are like a state team in Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
But, Pele scored 20, hypothetically, against them in one game or something daft. But on Wikipedia or whatever, in the stats, it just says, scored a bucket load against Juventus. It doesn't say... I don't know. I think the method...
Yeah, that's exactly it. You've hit the nail on the head, Travis. Is 1,200 odd goals maybe legit, but a lot of them will be against pub teams. So you're not doing him a disservice with that earlier statement, Dobby. He is keeping the tally himself, and I wouldn't mind. But you know what? He's brought on this war because he was once asked who's the greatest. Who is the greatest master, you or Lionel Messi? And his response was, well, when Messi has won 3 World Cups and scored over 1,000 goals, we can come back and talk. And I just thought, you know what? You've asked for this.
Yeah. I think
he did win a World Cup at 17, though, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He did win 3 World Cups. Although, he didn't play much in one of them.
With him as well. Like, I swear I've seen something where he got asked to name, like, the best 50 players of the decade or something, and didn't he have like a bit of a grievance with the players who he actually won those trophies with?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he didn't include a lot of his. Yeah, he had some issues with his former teammates, and I think he's once compared like Neymar to Messi in terms of being a great, just because Neymar's Brazilian, so he sort of sided with Neymar. There was another.
I don't think thing though. Sorry, it's like you ask, like my dad in his 60s would probably say that. From his sort of childhood, Pele was like a great, and then Maradona, came after that a couple of years later in like the 80s and stuff. But our generation, sort of like people with access to the internet, we're checking the stats on that, aren't we? We're all for stats now, and it's sort of been perceived by the younger generation and people in our 20s like ourselves that Pele may not be what my dad's memory remembers him as.
Yeah, I see Pele a bit. Just thinking about it, is my junior football career when it was 7-a-side, we played against the local girls team, Henderson Avenue Girls, and we won 32-0, I think, and I scored 7 goals. This just kind of reminds me of like me putting that against my like credentials,
career talent.
Yeah, them like if I ever made it professional, them 7 like come with me. I feel like this is kind of Pele's equivalent back in Brazil. So,
so you're going to side with him on the basis that you're counting those 7 goals against Hendy Ave?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So no, I'm just thinking as a comparison. Like, yeah, like there were 7 goals. I'm proud of them goals. So,
the only other the only other thing I can use in my argument is that sorry, this is slightly off topic, but I'll go quickly. Pele once asked for a computer simulation to recreate one of his all-time great goals. But there was no footage of this goal, so he claimed this was the best goal he'd ever scored, and then it was recreated by computer simulation in like 2017 or something, or 2013, and it was a goal against the state Juventus team. And basically, I'll send it to you both after we've left the bar, but this goal is just him chipping the ball above players. He chips the ball over like 3 players. So imagine Paul Gascoigne against Scotland, but doing that multiple times. The goalkeeper then comes towards him, diving with both fists, and he does the same, chips it over him, and then just heads it into an empty net. So it's based on his memory, this recreation, and that's what led me to believe that Pele might stretch the truth at times.
Yeah. And with this team, I don't know, like this Juventus side, have they just been created just to like benefit Pele? Like,
I think it's like a fan team. I think it's like a group of fans from Juventus, from Turin, that are living in Brazil, just played state football in Brazil.
But no, I feel like we're on the verge of becoming a bit of like a anti-Pele podcast at the moment. So I think Tracy, like you said, we'll go back to. He has won 3 World Cups and 1 at the age of 17. But he does have his J from in between his moments after a few beers, by the sounds of it.
I feel like this is an ongoing battle. I'm going to need to come back to it next week.
We'll keep doing regular features.
I'll try and convince you both. I'll try and convince you both by next week that he is the football's biggest liar.
I quite like that though, Jack. Give us a bullshit moment
every week. I'll have to go for a few Reddit threads.
Deepest, darkest research. You've got to be on Sao Paulo's like Evening Standard or whatever it is, and Rio de Janeiro Times and stuff like that. Translating from Portuguese, you've got to find like Pele niche every week.
I'm just so sceptical about this Juve side now. Like, I even feel like maybe the Brazilian authorities are in with it. They made this team to benefit Pele, and create a world star. And just this guy goes, a team that they're playing goes scored 20 goals against in the game, and then it just goes down on record.
You're spot on. I think I can slowly convince you both. We just need a few more visits to this bar, and eventually, like, one of the comments on that YouTube video of the recreation, by the way, is apparently Pele has his own gravitational pull, and that is what the goal looks like. It's like the ball's glued to him. So I'm suspicious.
Ask you a question. If you was to meet Pele, would you confront him on this issue? Would you say, I think you're a liar? Or would you go, oh, Pele, can I have a photo with you? And put it on your Instagram?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tell you what, it depends on the setting, because if it's like a sort of delegates high up FIFA official meeting a hotel in Switzerland, I'm not going to upset that. But equally, if I get him on my own, not on my own, that sounds a bit weird. But
he's got a train and he's
if
on the same carriage as you.
If I saw him in first class on the way down to King's Cross, I'm definitely asking him about this. In fact, you know what? One day I'll try and get him on this podcast, and I will confront him face to face. But until then,
I think he's got away with words. I think he'll have us come round to his ideas.
It's a good question though, Tracy. Maybe I need to sort of like wrestle with that myself, and I'm not sure what I'd do really. Sorry, I'll very quickly move on to my final football bullshit for this week. This next one is called Forever Young Nigeria. I don't know if either of you two are with this one, but a lot of Nigerian footballers seem to have gotten away with what I would say is the biggest lie, the biggest BS you can get away with in football, which is they're lying about their age. A lot of players, particularly from sort of the late noughties, apparently have taken away a few years off their real age. Now, lying about something as fundamental as age in professional football just seems bizarre to me. Like, you have to be pretty ballsy, I think, to get away with it. Just for reference, in 2010, Obafemi Martins was officially 25, but a story broke that saying that he was actually 32, which would now make him 42 in 2020, and he's still playing today. And Taribo West, apparently, when he ended his career in 2008, was in his late 50s. So, what do you two think to this? Is it possible that like players in top European leagues can just lie about their age?
I think it is unanimous, isn't it? It does happen quite widespread. I think, I've seen a few things from like Ray Parlour and stuff like that where they reckon Kanu in his Arsenal days was a couple of years older than what he says he was. I don't know. Yeah, you can sort of understand why they would lie though. Like, if they're trying to make a break for it into European football and into a top European league, then if it's from a nation where they might not have the infrastructure to track it from a young age, I guess that it's quite possible that they do that to benefit themselves, really. And I would do the same, to be honest.
I think even until maybe 5 years ago as well, even I always viewed Premier League players, once they surpassed maybe 30, 32, they got into that like, and the peak had gone and it was the end of the career. So yeah, if you're trying to make it as someone who's approaching 30 in the biggest leagues in the world, coming over from Africa, then you probably are going to want to knock a few years off your age just to show a bit of value, and it's worth that gamble. But I think for me the bigger question is just how does it even happen if it is true? Like, not even from the club level. I can understand like fake passport scam, but then when you're going through your visas and you're actually being able to like make the move to the country, how does it just not get picked up on? I don't know. It sounds crazy, but
I think
it doesn't surprise me.
You might have a bit of insight into it. Isn't it like through when they actually register the birth?
Yeah,
because a lot of countries might not have access to a
registrar's
office.
It's similar. There's definitely some issues about birth certificates anyway, but I think basically you can walk into any immigration office in Nigeria. I mean, this is going back like 10 years. But if you forge documents at a nearby business centre, you can change your date of birth. You just got to pay an extra 2,000 naira, which was the currency then, for the price of an international passport. So
right, okay.
So it's kind of like a bit of a.
Yeah.
It's not just footballers. Like obviously, footballers are the ones we sort of scrutinise, but I think these people are saying like they have like their real age, which was like 34 a lot of the time, and then they have a football age of 21. So it's just a different. But I always thought I kind of did look at Obafemi Martins when he played for Newcastle, and he wasn't as quick as I expected. Like for a 25-year-old who had built his career on pace. I just kind of still expected him to have a bit more left in the tank, and he'd often just hang around the goal, like the 6-yard box.
Do you think in today's footballing world, with the amount of like sports science and sport analysis that goes into it, that would get picked up on within, say, like, say if somebody turned up at training and said, I'm 30, I'm 28 years old. Do you think after a week or two worth of analysis, they could become a bit sceptical that they're actually maybe 6-7 years older, just because of how in depth it is now?
Yeah, because they're all.
It'd be interesting to see what would happen in that scenario, Dobby. Because imagine signing this like a 5-year deal, saying you're 27 when you're 32. Like the club thinks they're getting someone in the prime, but they might. Do you know what I mean? It'd be interesting to see if we're at a stage now where if we're saying that
the
it's
science
bullshit,
is that
developed, the team can track it down. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what would happen.
Yeah. I think for talking about football age and real age, I think my age, 25, my football age would probably be 38. So it'd be quite the reverse, to be honest. If someone said, how old are you, 25, what's your football age, 38? just work on a pivot. I'm from the complete reverse.
I think it might be a good social experiment for the three of us to just turn up at a club trials next summer, and we'll all just take our age down to like 19 and just see what they say. You know, are we going to get asked for our passports?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing we've realised from tonight, actually, like talking about that, and even talking about some of the rogue debuts, the George Weah's cousin, it's like football in like 10, 15 years, 20 years has developed so much that things that probably would have gone under the radar before, I think just now how kind of precise it is and how analytical and science, like how much the science has developed in it. I just don't think you would be able to get away with that now. But it just doesn't surprise me that only 10, 15 years ago, you probably were able to kind of just call someone's bluff and get away with it. Like, well, just bluff everybody even and go under the radar a bit.
Yeah, I think basically the main reason why Nigeria just like stopped, you know, sort of phased the older players out was because they got knocked out of the African Cup of Nations in 2010 by Angola and Zambia, and like they just, for them, that was seen as like a national embarrassment, and they were suddenly questioning the age. It's like, why is Oba Martins still in the team, and why is JJ Okocha 10 years older than his official age? So yeah, I think they've kind of like phased it out now. For now, we'll call time on the bar for this episode anyway. We've given ourselves a solid platform to build on for the weeks ahead, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a good first run out, good little warm up pre-season. So hopefully build on from here.
Yeah.
No, I've enjoyed it, lads. I think it's been good, and yeah, let's keep it up, and hopefully it carries on.
I love that.
Maybe it doesn't have to define us.
I love that. Just that opening day buzz and that feeling, like, you know, get a win and we're off and running here. And I feel like we've had a little bit of that tonight. And that's it really. That's it for us. From myself, Dobby, and Tracy. We'll see you on the next episode.